I think, embedded trauma from a life of having been exploited by capitalism that it feels like asking anyone for money is doing them harm.
Welcome to the Found Free podcast. I'm your host, Sabia Wade, Sabia Kashmir Wade, actually. And we have a mix here of spirituality, entrepreneurship, activism, and self-care. Today we're going to be focusing a lot on entrepreneurship, and I'm super excited, as always, to present Bear.
Hi.
Bear, how would you like to introduce yourself today?
Yeah, my name is Bear Bear. My pronouns are they, them. I am many things, but for the context of this, I'm an anti-capitalist small business coach. I also work as a life coach, a social justice educator, and sort of at my heart, I'm an artist.
So when you said there's many other things, but what's the other things?
Oh gosh, I could tell you so many things. Yeah, I'm an artist. I make visual art and theater. I'm a writer. I love to cook, and I like to ride my bike. I like going to the spa.
Yes, we just talked about that.
Which I did last night. Oh, I already hit the microphone. Yeah.
So what kind of art do you do?
Well, I studied photography in college, actually, but I don't do a ton of that anymore. But I make collages and watercolor and costumes and things like that.
Costumes?
You know, I'm from Louisiana.
So I've seen you do some festivals and events and stuff, but I knew that you made your own, but I didn't know that you were into
making them for other people. Yeah. Yeah, I've worked in theater kind of on the side for a long time, and some of that has been doing costumes for theater, costumes, masks, headdresses, all of those kinds of things. But it's really because of life in New Orleans that you learn how to make a costume, and then you just, because of Mardi Gras,
Yes.
and then that's just a thing that now I do sometimes on the side.
Learn something new about people you've known for years all the time. All the time.
Yep.
So today we're going to talk about entrepreneurship. We're going to talk about business. We're going to talk about all those things. And we've had conversations before, and I think the first season of my older podcast, and that was one of the episodes that people loved. Even to this day, people are like, "What about Bear? What about Bear?" That conversation was so helpful. So I kind of want to lay a couple of foundational things.
Great.
So I guess the first one that we could talk about, just to give a definition, but what is capitalism?
Oh, yeah. The big question. Capitalism is an economic system. It's the economic system that we live inside of. And there's lots of different things a person could say about it. And I guess I sort of want to divert a little bit just to say that this is not a thing I studied in school. Like I said, I studied art. So I'm, my knowledge around this is really sort of self-taught from reading and just living inside of capitalism.
It also means that the knowledge is attainable.
Yeah, I think that's true. That's true. So capitalism is a system that relies on exploitation to function. It relies on toxic growth. It relies on scarcity, and it relies on extraction in order to keep doing the thing that it does. It's an economic system where the economy has to continually exponentially grow in order for it to be seen as good or healthy.
Mm-hmm. And where would you say, it's a big question, but where would you say our economy is right now? Because we're in this space, right? We're all dying deeply inside every day. But I feel we're in this space, there's been a big shift over the last 4 years. COVID came around, and for some people, obviously COVID is a monstrosity, it still is, but for some people that probably was the first time they felt some type of economic relief.
Yeah, I really felt that. It made me sort of mad in the early pandemic that suddenly there were all of these economic accessibility things that were happening, because as though poor people had not previously existed or needed support or care or like, you know, discount codes or access to things for free or whatever. But it was like suddenly a much larger swath of the population was experiencing economic hardship that they never had before. And so then...
And a very particular, like, I think it also comes to, like, who is experiencing economic hardship, right? It was like, before, okay, maybe marginalized communities, BIPOC communities have historically been dealing with these types of issues, but now that is reaching certain populations is now something that we have to do something about immediately.
Yeah, suddenly it was like white people in the middle class were experiencing the same thing that like many other populations had been experiencing for a long time, that it was like, oh no, we have to take care of the people. And it's like, yeah, cool, great, but also like, but maybe we should have been taking care of the people all along.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And it also was like, I think specifically like in that time was like marginalized communities, because of many of our jobs and where we stand within our jobs, still weren't really getting taken care of because they still had to go to work. They still had to do the frontline stuff. They were still getting COVID at higher rates. Like it's been wild. Okay, I'm not gonna go to my bag around that because we can talk about that for a long time.
Yep.
But compared to that and like where I see that we're at now is like our rent and our housing prices are astronomical.
Absolutely.
Right? And like groceries
so expensive.
Are so expensive. Yep. But it's still like this awareness, especially like the communities that we share, which is like, you know, activism and spirituality and kind of this like embodiment, you know, like all these kind of things that we're in. It's hard to manage like being in a world that costs so much and wanting to do meaningful work and also wanting not to charge somebody $1,000 for 1 hour of your time, but also being like, listen, you know, like, I have bills to pay and they keep getting higher. And also like, I guess like in the work that you do and the place that you hold, like, how is that showing up in that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. I feel like we're sort of like, you know, people talk about like late stage capitalism, and I feel like that's like that is the stage of capitalism that we're in now. And some of what that means is that we've like run out of things to extract from. And now it feels like the only place that's left to extract from is like from us. I mean, you know, whatever. It's not as though we've stopped extracting from the earth or, you know.
Yeah, that's another conversation.
Yeah, all the other places that extraction is always happening. But yeah, it really feels like a lot of the costs are being sort of passed on to the consumer in a way that they previously hadn't been.
Yes.
For the profit of corporations and, you know, people who are amassing and hoarding wealth. And so, yeah, it's tough right now to be a small business owner and to know what it is you need in order to live a thriving, beautiful life, and also to still stay committed to like values around accessibility and really wanting people to be able to, you know,
even feeling like good in your body about like what you're doing, because you could have like a service or a business that is necessary, needed. But because of that imbalance that we're kind of like speaking to, it's like, I don't even feel good doing the work anymore.
Yeah.
Because I can't do it the way that I want to do, or I can't make it as accessible, or, you know, people are telling me they need it, but I can't just give it to them because labor and time and costs.
Yeah.
So before we go into like, because I have very specific questions.
Great.
But how did you get to this point? Like, how did you get into this work?
Yeah. Okay. So let's see. The kind of arc of my work life is that I started out. I waited tables I worked in restaurants from the time I was a teenager, and I waited tables for like 14 years.
I did it for like 3.
Yeah, just 14 years is too long. I was becoming a bad person by the end of my my time in the restaurant life, but yeah, so I really wanted a way to like additionally make money, and so I started teaching yoga, and I taught yoga for about 10 years. And out of teaching yoga, I started doing life coaching because I was like teaching classes that were oriented around embodiment and justice, and like trying to use these practices to help us be able to be like more present with the joys and the horrors of our world. And so then people wanted like more support from me than I could offer in the context of yoga teaching. And so I started doing life coaching. Okay, so doing life coaching, teaching yoga, also waiting tables, then
Doing a bunch.
yeah, doing all the things, and just trying to cobble together a living. And I think, sort of out of doing life coaching, people were hiring me as their life coach, but really what they were hiring me for was to like talk about how to use Instagram or talk about how to have boundaries with their
1000%.
clients or whatever. And so I realized that what I was actually doing was business consulting. And so then I started offering that as a thing. So I say all this to say, and then alongside that, I quit teaching yoga because I was finally coming to terms with like how that was participating in cultural appropriation. And yeah, so I say all this to say I didn't set out to be like, I'm going to make $1 zillion by being I'm going to be a 7-figure small business coach or whatever. I really was just sort of following the lead of the needs that I was coming up against. And so it was like, oh, people have this need to be in their bodies. People have this need to like learn how to, feel their feelings and be in their lives in a more meaningful way. And that was, yoga was the tool that I had for that. And then it was like, oh, there's actually like a different set of tools that I have, and I can help people try to do some of the same stuff, but like through the tool of life coaching.
Sure.
And then it was like, oh, people have this like adjacent need that is about business and about entrepreneurship. And I also have those skills. And so really just sort of, yeah, it evolved really organically.
And I think like that's like a big point just for anyone who's like thinking about like, how do I get to A to Z, or have a desire that starts here? Like most of us don't really know exactly from the very start what we're going to do, where we're going to go, or how it's going to look.
Yeah.
But it's just like responding to, oh, this thing, oh, this seems to be a theme. Maybe I should go with that and be more specific about that theme.
Yep.
And then like, and that also pushes you into building your business. Cause I think I'm the same way. Like I started off in a business, like, I started off as a doula, of course, but like before then I knew I wanted to be a business owner. I started, things that I'm like, I'm gonna start this, I'm gonna start that. And finally got into being a doula, then started moving into like my nonprofit and this and that. But all those were responses to things that were coming to me.
Yeah.
When people were like, I want to get trained by you, that's when I started BADT. Like that. Like it all was like all responsive. So I think if that's not a no for anybody, just trust the path.
Yeah, right. And the thing that I was responding to was not like, I want to make a lot of money.
I don't think it can really, I mean, maybe it can. Okay, it can be. But I think like if you're really talking about like activism and you're talking about embodiment, like I don't know. I mean, you can obviously go into it with like, I'm going to make this much money. But most people at the root are probably struggling with, how do I make money?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that the thing I'm trying to say there is not like that wanting to make money is bad, but that like trying hard to make a lot of money without having like some deeper reason that you're doing the work that you're doing, I think is just like a really fast path to burnout. So.
And so there's been times definitely in my work where like I'm doing the work, doula, activist, founder, whatever I'm doing, whatever hat I have on at the time. And sometimes it's hard. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it's so hard. However, because I made the choice to be here, because the passion is there, right? I can move through it.
Yeah.
Now, they ain't gonna say I'm not gonna push through it crying, mad, flipping tables over. No one's saying that.
Yeah.
But I do have like some level of resilience to keep moving forward.
Right, because there's something deeper like that's driving the work.
Because money is one thing. Don't get me wrong. Like, and I guess we can go into this direction too. Like, I see money as a tool.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, I don't see it as something that defines me. I don't see it as something that like, I don't have to have so much money. Like, I don't have to have so much. I like to have a nice amount. But like, I don't need to have so much. And I think part of like my money story is like, one, being Black, being queer, being all these things, and seeing literal like wealth gaps that exist in our economy, and being like, okay, I would like to have money to take care of myself, like to actually take, not like, oh, just pay my rent, like to take care of my health needs, to take care of like the things that come up, to like pay for a therapist that I need,
to buy back some land,
period. Like like into like, and I also like the convenience of money. Like I like when I move house to house, I want to pay somebody to help me move. I don't want to lift the thing. It's like it's not gonna work. Right. And I also feel like another part, especially with me being a person of color, it's like I want to have money to provide for my community.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that has to come with boundaries over the years, right? But like I want it, because not everyone can go, like for some people that are like, oh, I'm $400 short on rent, let me go get a loan. For people that look like me, it's not easy to go get a loan.
Yeah.
It's not easy to just find another person that you can just get $400 from.
Yep.
It's not easy to do that. And like I want to be able to be a resource for my community, so that like if the, when the shit hits the fan, which it does, right? Like I can be like, here's the thing. And I mean, if you make a plan to pay it back, I'm not going to say no, but like, but also like it can go, and I know that it's being put to good use, and I can just be done.
Yeah.
So I guess like for you, what is your money story?
Yeah.
And like, how do you utilize money?
Yeah. I think that in the like artist, activist, punk, queer kind of communities that I've been in for, all of my adulthood, like money gets really painted as like something that's like ethically bad. And like having money is bad and caring about money is bad. And like, it's like, money is the root of all evil or whatever. And then there's this like other end of things that like, inside capitalism and also like inside a lot of the online business world on the internet and the coaching space. Yes. Yeah. In the coaching space, especially, like money is held up as like somehow like ethically good and like ethically evolved, that like you're more spiritually evolved if you like can cultivate an abundance mindset or whatever the kind of particular flavor of that thing is at the moment. And I think that the place that I've arrived at is like really somewhere in the middle, like between those two things, where it's like, I don't think that having money or needing money is ethically bad, but I also don't think that like, pursuing it at all costs is somehow like ethically good, or like that getting it means anything about who I am as a person. And yeah, I feel like I really, money seems sort of neutral to me in a lot of ways. And of course, I say that knowing that like it has been used in really ethically not neutral ways. And like the pursuit of it has caused people to do things that are, egregiously harmful over millennia. But for me as an individual inside of the system, like me having enough money just kind of seems fine. And so, I didn't grow up with a lot of money. I grew up in the deep South in South Louisiana in a small city, and my family was, sort of a mix of like poor and working class. And in my adulthood, I have sort of, I think, like passed as more middle class than I actually am for a lot of the time, if that makes sense. Like, I get that. And like, I'm like, oh yeah, actually I only made $22,000, for like, or less for like many years of my adulthood. And then in the last like maybe 5 years in my business, things have been better and I make more money than that now. And yeah, the convenience is like so real to be able to hire movers when you move, or, there's so many things I could point to that it's just like, oh yeah, I can just pay to go get my teeth cleaned. Yeah. Hello.
Can we hold a moment for like how expensive dental work is?
Oh, it's so expensive. It's
like
so
I went
expensive.
the other day because I need to get a root canal.
Oh god.
And it's all fine. I'm good.
I'm sorry.
There's no pain. It's okay. But like I went and they were like, yeah, it's like, however much money it is. And I'm like, okay. And they're like, when do you want to schedule it? I'm like, okay, let me schedule it, do the whole thing. But in my head, all I can think about is like, y'all really, if I did not have this money, y'all would just be like,
we'll just pull the tooth.
Whatever. Yeah, like we'll just, if I can afford for you to even pull the tooth.
Right. Totally. Yeah. Yeah.
It bothers me. Like I think about it every single day. I mean, obviously I'm upset about how much money I have to pay, but I'm also just like, if I did not have this money, y'all would literally just let me walk around with my mouth just a mess.
Yeah, totally. Okay, here's a really specific example. I missed my flight yesterday.
You did?
Yes, to get here, and I had to buy another flight.
You didn't even tell me.
I know. Well, I don't know. I was embarrassed.
Money shame.
Right. Okay, so I had some money shame, but I was just like, God, I'm so grateful that I am at a place in my life where like $150 to buy a new plane ticket is like not a catastrophic amount of money to me anymore. Like it's annoying, and I like, I felt really bad about it,
Yeah.
but it's not causing that level of just like,
Complete anxiety and
cortisol pumping through my veins,
yes.
in the way that it did for so long. So yeah.
You did not tell me. I was like,
Sorry.
oh, Bear got here. They're doing their thing. I texted you this morning. I'm like, okay, we
Yeah.
can hang, whatever the case is. And
Yeah.
you're like,
I don't know. I was gonna tell you later, but since it came up, I'll tell you now. Yeah.
well, speaking of like money and convenience and business, and like I think specifically, like I have to really be, because there's so many things I want to talk about, but specific to like, I feel like our space that we share together is most of the people that are business owners are looking to do some type of like service-based care. They're looking to do online courses, some education, right? Like they're usually justice oriented people, right? Who are like, I love this thing, I want to grow this thing. And with that though comes like this guilt of like, I don't even want to charge anything.
Yep.
Or I want to charge like, I mean, people have like hot, like so much, like their online courses are like so well built. They have so much education to provide. They have a service that is so necessary. They have like all these things that are like, I want to charge $10.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. We really have, I think, like embedded trauma from a life of having been exploited by capitalism, that it feels like asking anyone for money is like doing them harm. Like saying my course or my service costs X amount of dollars is doing something bad to someone else to set your rate at a number that feels unaffordable to you personally. And I think that really gets in the way of people being able to build a sustainable business for themselves.
And when they have this trauma though, right? Because I know that I definitely have had money trauma.
Oh yeah.
And I think
Same.
Yeah, right? Like, and the trauma comes from like, especially if you are someone in your family or in your immediate space that maybe hasn't made a certain amount of money. Like some people think like, oh, you're gonna make a certain amount of money and then you're gonna just be so happy, you're gonna be rolling, in the bills or whatever. And it's like, I don't think that's the experience. I know for me, when I started to get more financially stable, it was like, I'm confused.
Yeah.
I was like, I don't know what to do.
Yep.
Like, I mean, I know I need to pay my bills. Okay, granted, that feels nice to be able to do that. Duh, right?
Yep.
But like, also, I'm very confused about what to even do with this money. I don't like. Literally, I got a financial advisor, and I was like, can you tell me what the white people do? I was like,
totally.
I don't know what to do, because then when certain stuff, they're like, this kind of account is better than this type of account.
Yeah.
And so you get confused. And then I also think that like there is a part of it that becomes, and this is for anybody, no matter what financial standing you're on, there's a part of it that becomes like isolating. Like whether you don't have money, you do have money, or you're somewhere in between, you don't want to talk about it.
Yep.
Because there's like shame on any level.
Yes.
Especially when you're doing justice-oriented work.
Yep.
And that's just like our environment. So like, I guess my first question to you is like, how do we aim to kind of acknowledge our money trauma? And like, maybe what are some first steps to moving through it, no matter where we're at? Because there's money trauma on every single level.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that the like there's many ways probably to work around this, but like one way is to just start by sort of identifying like what is up for each of us individually. And I think that there's a lot of guilt for having money. And there's a lot of shame for not having money. And this fucks us up. I'm sorry, can I curse?
You can curse. You're grown woman.
It fucks us up because there's no, there's I mean, maybe there's somebody who's like the richest person in the world, but like, you know, basically for everybody, there is someone, let's say for everybody in the US, for everybody who's listening to this podcast, there is somebody who makes or has more money than you. And there's somebody who makes or has less than you. And so we feel shame for having less than all the people that have more than us. And we feel guilt for having more than all the people that, sorry, did I say that backwards? We have shame about the people who have more, and we have guilt about the people who have less, because, you know, we, in our hearts, we see how wrong that is, because it really affects people's material lives. And in extreme cases, like their literal ability to survive is predicated on having enough money. And so, I think being able to untangle, like, okay, I feel guilt in this particular way about these things that are wrong, and like I feel shame about the ways that I'm like failing inside the system of capitalism, and being able to, you know, sort of like find empowerment in the places where the shame lives, and say, okay, it's actually okay. Like, it doesn't mean anything about me that I don't have as much as some other people. And also to like really do the grief work around the guilt, because guilt, I feel like, sort of stops us from being able to go any further. But grief is like a portal through to something else. And if I can say, like, I feel this deep guilt that I have more money than other people, but like underneath that is a profound sadness at the inequities that exist. And if I can really be with that and go like, okay, like I can hold in my body some of the grief of the ways that the world really harms people, that then I'm also able to like step more into a place of empowerment and a place
and I can move into that. Like, I think like a lot of times when we have that shame or guilt or whichever end that we're on, it stops us from really doing the work of understanding how capitalism works.
Yeah. Because it's too individualized.
It's too individualized. It's like, I'm a failure because I don't have this much money. Right? Or I make so much money, I'm just gonna be happy. Like, you know, it's like, but on both sides of it, it removes us from the ability or the awareness that we're working within the system.
Exactly.
And the system is meant to work this way on purpose. Right? Like, and then some of us crack the code where maybe, depending on our identities, we weren't supposed to have as much financial whatever. But then also, like, when people crack the code, which is so annoying as a Black person, when people like crack the code and then like you know, either white people or people that are very much in power, like, well, this Black person, they make a lot of money, so y'all can too.
Right, we like, pretend the code LeBron doesn't exist.
Like, it's LeBron James. Like, you know what I mean? I'm like,
totally.
No, that's still not the story of majority of people. Right. And so I think like you said, moving through that shame or that guilt also opens your eyes to, I'm not a failure because I'm not doing things quote unquote right. But this system was created, checks and balances. Someone's going to be down here. Someone's going to be up here. We don't want there to be we don't want there to be everyone just in the middle, right? Like, what someone to and then, like, obviously we know too that what goes with that is power. And distraction. And I think a lot of times people, like, that's how I really equate like capitalism. Is like, because there is that intentionality of someone not making enough, that person won't have the literal capacity or space to focus on things that matter. For us collectively.
Totally. Right, because we're just hustling to survive.
Yeah, just like when people are like, go vote. It's like, bro, like I get it, right? But sometimes, like, if you're working 24 hours a day, like, what day is it?
Like,
I haven't had time to look at the candidates or have the this or have the that. Like, but then we have like societal pressure, like, you don't and we even see that in justice spaces, right? Where like people are like literally doing the work every day. They're living within the spaces that they're fighting for justice in. And people are like, you don't have this, you don't know this, you're not doing all of this. And it's like, not for nothing, but they're broke, they're struggling, they're trying to keep it together. And now here we are putting more pressure on them to be better.
Totally. I think some of what you just described of like, you know, the single person who ascends and has some kind of like class mobility, like, and then we forget entirely, we like want to hold that person up as an example of like how the system doesn't exist or something. And I think like, you know, it makes me think again about the kind of thing about like people who think that having money is bad and people who think that having money is good. It's like, I think the overemphasis for people who think having money is bad. It's like we've like zoomed out too far and we can only look at things in the like system. They're only looking at things in the systemic context. And from a systemic perspective, yeah, money is like really, yeah, it is fucking shit up.
Yeah.
But then like for the people who think that it's good and it's like, you know, spiritually evolved or whatever, they're only looking at it from the perspective of the individual and refusing to look at the systemic context that any of that is happening in. And I think, yeah, being able to sort of hold both of like, I want individually here for me to have enough money. I also want for you to have enough money, right? Like I want for each of us individually to have enough money. And I can like hold that inside the systemic context that says like a lot of how that happens is through exploiting other people. And so if I want to try to have enough money inside the system, I have to work very hard to make sure that what I'm doing is not inadvertently playing into that system.
Can I like, okay, so I wanted to like, how do I give context to this? So it's been times in my life, I think, because just of like just my identities and stuff, like I think a lot of things with money is generational.
Absolutely.
Right? So like, and I find that, right, when we're talking about money, like there's money coaches, there's business coaches, there's like people, and we'll talk about, you know, maybe talking about how some of them are very helpful and some of them are not. Right. And money also, even though it can be maybe a neutral space in some definition, it's also not neutral in the sense of who has it, who needs it.
Absolutely.
Why that, you know what I mean?
Yep.
And so like I definitely have been in spaces like with right, like coaches or business or whatever, and their idea of money, sometimes you have the people who are like, you got to make $10 trillion and there's never an end, right? And I think that's just like, when is the end, right? Like literally I was talking to my financial advisor, I was like, can we figure out how much money I need to live this kind of life?
Yep.
What is the number?
Right. What is enough? What is enough?
Yeah, what is enough, right? Because I don't want to always be striving for more.
Yep.
I don't want to do that.
How stressful.
And like I'm already like, you know, the ideas and the vision, everything's going. So I'm like, I need to like have a limit, right? And I want the limit. I desire the limit. And I also feel like there's the other side of it where sometimes people may name themselves as like anti-capitalist or whatever the case may be. And they're just like, everyone needs to make $30,000 a year and everyone will be fine.
Yes.
And I'm like, but that's also problematic because maybe you have that. Like maybe that's a freedom that you have to make $30,000 a year. And especially because like, especially when I started getting into like financial, I like did an internship in my financial advising. Like I did all that. And I learned so much about inheritance.
Yep.
Inheritance is a disparity.
Yes.
A lot of Black and brown folks do not have an inheritance.
Yes.
If anything, they're inheriting some bills or some costs.
Yep.
Right?
Absolutely.
And I've learned that, like, just like in the space that I was in, I was like, wait, what, how much I pay sales to them?
Yep.
like, oh, so you can make $30,000 a year.
Right.
Because you have this inheritance, or maybe that inheritance is a house, or maybe it's land, or maybe it's this, or maybe it's just the connections of the family that you have that if you were to need something, is going to come to you.
Yep.
Right? But then you have other people who may be more marginalized, whatever the case may be, who are like, no, I need to make 6 figures.
Right.
Realistically, for me to carry the things that I carry, for me to also create inheritance. Like, I need to do this thing. So I guess, like, can you speak on, like, that reality that's just the truth?
Yeah, I think that you bring up so many good points there. I guess, like, the first thing that comes to mind is just, like, really thinking about my own experiences with sort of, like, the wealth of a particular person's network, and how, your example before of, like, you know, needing $400 for rent, and like, do you have friends you could reach out to, or family members who you could reach out to and be like, hey, I am $400 short, can you spot me? I think a lot of people who sort of like see themselves as broke or see themselves as like not having a lot of money, like actually have quite a bit of network wealth that they maybe are not acknowledging or don't, like, we don't realize that that's a privilege.
And have shame around acknowledging.
Yes. Yeah, totally. And I think there's so much secrecy around familial money stuff because of the kind of like American myth of individual, bootstraps, whatever. And so, I feel like some years ago, I started to feel really frustrated because a number of people that I knew were buying houses. And I was like, how are all these people buying houses? And so I just started asking people like really point blank, which like made some people really uncomfortable, I think. But I was just sort of like how are you doing that? Like, where is the money coming from? Like, I know you work at a small nonprofit. Like, I can't imagine that I don't know what your salary is, but I can't imagine that it's enough for you to buy this house. Like, and without fail, everybody that I talked to was like, oh yeah, my parents are lending or giving me the money for the down payment or for whatever. My parents are covering the closing cost. Like, people in their families were supporting that thing, but that's like all made so invisible. And so we don't actually see the inner workings of like how people are gathering and amassing wealth that then becomes an inheritance, right? And so it just looks like, oh, some people, white people, middle class people are like having this experience of upward mobility. Meanwhile, everybody else is like, fighting over scraps. And it's really,
It's like watching an episode of HGTV. Everybody has watched it. Everybody watches House Hunters or whatever the case may be. Woo woo. And then they're always like, the person's like the husband is like, I'm a teacher. I'm a science teacher at the high school. So you're like, okay, maybe like $50K
in a good school district.
Yeah. Like, okay, cool. And then like, the wife will be like, I'm a part-time, whatever it is, something
stay-at-home mom.
Yeah, and I work part-time selling LuLaRoe, whatever. And then, you're like, and you're like, okay, maybe on a nice day with LuLaRoe, because we know most of the making the money is a scam. Like, let's be nice and say they're making 30. I'm being nice, right?
Yeah.
But like, so then you're like, okay, collectively y'all make about 90.
Yeah.
Let's say on a good day, and then it'll be like, okay, what's your budget for the house? And it'll be like $750,000.
Right.
And you're like,
the math is not mathing.
What is the secret? Like, who parents got the money? Who got the coin? Who done invested? Who got this? Who got that? And it's like, but I think like to get like really to center back to like individuals being business owners. That's the pressure that we feel because we're like, we gotta get a house, we gotta do this, we gotta do that, we gotta like whatever. And it's like, how am I? How am I?
How am
people
I?
People are buying houses, even me, right? Like, I make a decent coin in this point in my life, and like I've been at places where like, I remember I got approved for a loan. It was like, 6 figures, whatever case may be. And so now we're looking at houses, trying to be cute. I was like, okay, let me see this how you adult, right? And and I looked at houses a few years before when I wasn't making the money I was making. And I was living in San Diego, and everything is like, San Diego is super expensive, right? And so I waited until I made some better coin. It was like, okay, I'm in Georgia now. So let me see, like, whatever. So I look at, like, first of all, you want to get a decent house, right? Because we're also talking about money also means quality, right? Totally. So it's like, do you want something ready-made? Do you want us to be like, walk in, we already got the jam going?
You can just live there?
Yeah. Or do I want like something I'm like, well, what about the floor? I'm going to have to fix that. And what about this? And I want a ready-made situation.
Yep.
I want to walk in and feel like, wow, I don't want to fix the back thing and the crown molding and is it mold downstairs? I don't want to do that, right? Yep. But then when I was thinking about it, like, to make it make sense, one, I would have to put down so much money.
Yep.
Where
does the money come from? Who has that kind of
if
money all in one lump sum?
Penalized, whatever it is. And then it's like, okay, you do that whole thing. And then it's like, you got to think about the furniture. You got to think about this. You got to think about the lawn care. You got to think about all those things as well. And then I was like, at the time I was thinking about like, would I be living here forever? Would this be like an investment property?
Sure.
And I was like, but even if I made it an investment property, I'm going to have to charge such a high rate of rent. And who's moving there? Georgia's, the pay rate, the whatever range, the minimum range has to be less than $10.
Yeah.
So I'm like, who is moving here? Like, what are we talking about?
Yeah, who's going to come and pay this money?
What are we talking about? So I was like, never mind. Yeah. And as you know, I just bought my grandmother's land.
Yep.
my great great grandmother's land, acre of land, and it was very cheap.
Yep.
Like
yeah. Rural
it was,
land, right?
yeah, it's rural land, right? And I bought that, and I was like, okay, this is an investment that I want to build on, because it's not like I don't have to, and there's nothing wrong with sex work, but I don't have to go sell it right now.
Yep.
I'm a sex work positive person, if y'all didn't know. But like, I don't have to go sell, because I don't want to sell it right now.
Yep.
But it's like, damn, in order for me to afford housing.
Totally.
But then it's also like the jobs that are in this economy don't pay you enough either.
Yep.
And like, so then, I feel like also since COVID, there's like this penalizing that's happening, where like everything was remote, and now it's like remote jobs are getting paid less because they want you to come into work.
Mm-hmm.
But then also people need to be at home so they can like be well.
Yep. Yeah. I really don't. I mean, I wish I had more insight to say like, here is what I foresee happening in the long term with any of this. But like,
no one knows.
I really don't know what the end game is here. I don't know how this is gonna shake out in the long run. Like it feels like we just are extracting more and more intensively from the population, and like people are just doing worse and worse. And that's true if you have a salary job, and it's also true if you're a small business owner right now.
So do you think, okay, I'm going to switch it up a little bit, because listen, I have big feelings on all of this. And I think there's obviously like, there's a migration, especially for Black and brown folks, to be like, let me go back to my land.
Yeah.
And like, I feel like really blessed to have like been able to purchase the land that I purchased, because I could build a house on there and still pay less.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Doesn't matter. Anyway, so, because it really pisses me off. But one of the things that I would love, like with this context of like capitalism and what it does to us, and also like, a lot of us are like millennials and Gen Zers who really don't give a shit. Millennials, like I'm ready, like I'm definitely like, the TikToks with the millennial boss, and they're like, oh yeah, you're sick, put your laptop down. Yes. That's me all the way. I'm like, put it down. Why are you working? Why are you doing this? Go away. You know what I mean? But I feel like Gen Zers are definitely like, I don't give a shit about none of this. Yep. I kind of work. I do my little my time here. Don't call me afterwards. Don't whatever. Yep. Pay me, and if you don't pay me enough, I'm gonna go find a new job, and they're gonna pay me enough over here, right? Love that. Also, snaps to y'all. But like, for people that are like small business owners, for people who are like wanting to do justice oriented work, especially wanting to do care work and whatever that looks like, is it possible to have a quote unquote successful business and be anti-capitalist?
Well, I think I have one. I think maybe you have one. I don't know if you identify as anti-capitalist, but
yeah, I identify as like, I want to put like the money that I make in my businesses, I'm always hiring people because I want to put them in the spots and the positions to earn, to also have a life, to also be doing work that's passionate for them, and to just be in a space that actually cares about them.
Absolutely.
And I think that inherently is like anti-capitalist. It's like, I care about you?
Yes.
But can both exist?
Yeah, I think that they really can, and I think it's such a shame that we feel like we have to either do one or the other, because I think that really it like limits our imagination of what actually is possible in the small business world. And I don't think that small businesses are gonna be small business is not the revolution, but I do think that our businesses can be sites of liberation and sites of practicing for the world that we wished we lived in. And I think, the liberated parts are not in, they're not in conflict with the parts that are trying to make enough money to thrive, and I think the idea that there's like one $30,000 or whatever the number is, there's like a salary that is like the ethically acceptable salary for a person to make, or like be like above a certain income threshold. Now you don't count. You're no longer anti-capitalist. I think that like each one of us has a different life and a different context that we're making money inside of, and I think it really is sort of. I don't mean to be like. I don't want to like overemphasize the individualism here, but I do think that it's kind of a personal choice and a personal like assessment of like how much money is enough, you know, to your point before of like, this is the life that I want to have. How much money does it take to get me there? And each of us gets to decide like what is the kind of life that we want to have. You know, and I think actually I think we talked about this on the podcast years ago, but that like it is different to be, you know, for you to be a Black person trying to make money and you know, the historical context that you're in, the familial context that you're in, for you to want to make X number of dollars, like that means something different than for me as a white person to want to, you know, make that same amount of money. Like that does something different for me. And it like comes from a different set of historical and familial contexts. And so I do really think it's important for each of us to kind of look at our life, see what it is that we want, look at our positionality inside these different systems that we live inside of and go, okay, like what does it look like for me to do this, for me to run a business in a way that is in alignment with my own values from my personal position.
That's what I love about your work too, because there is that level of like, this is like, there is a theme, right? And a thing that we're all working towards, but it's also very personal.
Yeah.
The story is very personal. So it's like, if you come from a family historically that has been very, very poor, in this lifetime, you're probably going to want to make more money.
Yep.
There's a recovery that has to happen for you to even get to a certain level, you know? And I think sometimes people miss that. And it's also about desire too. Like some people really love a simple life. They're like, I want, and it makes them happy, right? In their body, in their souls, they're happy. They're like, I come home, I work my 8 hours or so, maybe less than that. I have my little house in the woods, right? And that's cute. And then you have people like me who are like, I want to travel.
Yep.
And unfortunately, traveling is not cheap.
Yep. Nope.
Like, right? And it's like, and it's not necessarily about like anything other than like, I also want to live the life that when I die, I feel like I did what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And what I don't want to do, right? Like I think like there's some levels of agreement of like, you probably don't need to have $100 billion in your account.
I agree.
You know, like you probably don't need to have that. Like that's probably something that, because me and my friend was just having a conversation the other day, like, can you be a billionaire and have done that ethically?
Yeah. I'm going to go with probably not. I don't think so.
I was like, I do think that you could possibly become a millionaire.
Yeah.
And do it ethically. I think
agree.
that you can like launch something, have something that like really just created some steam.
Yep.
And things happen. But billionaire, like even if you're not literally saying to someone like, I don't give a fuck about you, somewhere there was a choice.
Yep.
That you made.
Yep.
That said, I don't give. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And so we were like having that conversation, but I think it's so important, like the point that you're making around like it is individual around like what your enough is, but also people need to become clear about what their enough is.
Yep.
For their own selves.
Yep.
Because, like, I am, like I said, I'm very much type A. I want to do all things. Woo, woo, I want to build. And now that, you know, I feel like I'm a woman of a certain age, you know, and 35, 36 this year. And I just feel like I energetically just don't have the desire to work as much as I used to.
Yeah, absolutely.
I just don't.
And you don't want to do that
forever.
Yeah.
Like when people are like 82, like obviously the people that run the world right now, like especially in the US, 80 plus, baby, aren't you tired?
Yeah.
Don't you want to just go lay down somewhere, just be cute, maybe have some grandkids, your animals, maybe whatever the case may be, travel, have a little sex, whatever you do at 80. You know what I mean? But like now y'all so connected to your desire for power.
Yeah.
Your desire for money.
Yeah.
That like you won't even let yourself rest.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really you know, it's really wild how much we've tied up our ability to find meaning with our ability to make money. And I think that's part of why so many people keep working relentlessly forever, because we don't have other ways to feel like I matter and my existence matters. And you know,
all I want to work on, honestly, I mean, I love work. Like I do. I love my work. I love whatever. But I'm like at this point where I just want to work on my relationships. I just want to work on like, you know, my acre of land. What do I want there? Like I want to work on like having fun. I want to work on like the health of my body. Like
Yeah.
I want to work on those things.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily want to be like extracting from other things. I just want to like
Yeah.
pour into me in a healthy way that isn't hurtful to anybody else.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think like also when we do that, we often end up like contributing back out into the collective and contributing back out into the whole. And like that also really matters, that um like amassing wealth for its own sake is I think is really like sort of empty comparatively. And I guess I also just want to flag here that like I think the sometimes in the like realm of folks who think like making a lot of money is good, that there's this sort of like propping up of like philanthropy as somehow, yeah. Okay,
Yes.
that eye roll says it all, right? But like
I tell you, I literally like did a deep dive into like financial, like once I started getting a certain amount of money and I said, what do the white people do?
Yeah.
I started asking the white people what y'all do.
Yeah.
And they were telling me what they do. And then I started like, I got into like the venture capital space, right? And like I started learning about philanthropy and like how people are like, this foundation gave 10 million. I'm like, that's so they can save on their taxes and they can do this and they have this benefit and that benefit. Like it's not as like straightforward of like just doing the good work.
Right, totally. And I think that like amassing a certain amount of wealth without like again, like without being able to anchor that pursuit of whatever that number is, without being able to anchor that in a systemic context that looks at like who each of us is and how we got here to this point, that like really is dangerous, right? It's really dangerous because the end result there is like often not actually beneficial to the people that it purports to be beneficial to.
I'm always so happy to talk to you because you really give me like so much context and so many layers and like you personalize this instead of saying like this is the one brand of this, right? This is the right and wrong thing to do with no like deviation based on who you are, what your needs are, and what your network needs are, family, friends, whatever the case may be. So I want to thank you for this conversation so far. And I also want to thank y'all for tuning in so far. And we have another episode coming. We're going to get into some sketchy business practices. However, before we do that, Bear, tell us how we can reach you.
You can find me on the internet at bearcoaches.com, and I spend some time on Instagram. My Instagram handle is at bearabear, so it's Hebert. It looks like Hebert, and it's got an underscore at the end of it because somebody else already had the whole username without the underscore. You know how that goes.
Thank you. So we will see y'all in part 2 for more with Bear and more about sketchy business practices. Thank y'all for coming to the Found Free podcast with me, Sabia Wade.